We have already created our first binding from C# code. Let's see how the same thing would be done but from XAML code, so you can see a comparison between doing it from C# code and doing it from XAML code. Let's comment this binding we specified earlier, and we will proceed to go to the main page.xaml file. First of all, we need an information source, which, if you remember, was the first step we performed in the event handler from C# code. For this, we must indicate that we want to use a namespace where the entity called person is located. The reason is that we cannot access the class from the XAML code without having previously created the namespace where it is located. How can we do this? Well, what we're going to do is to go to the section of the namespaces that are part of the content page, and we will create a new one. Let's type xmlns:, this is mandatory, and afterwards you can define the name you want. In my case, I will take the name of the folder and I will name it models. I'm going to indicate that this is equal to, and I'm going to continue with CLR namespace : and we can see the Visual Studio help, which shows us different namespaces that have been found so we can use them as part of the project. In our case, if we go back to the class called person, we can see which namespace we need to use. Let's indicate then that the namespace is data binding demo. With this, the results are filtered and we're shown two namespaces, the root namespace and the namespace where the models are located. It is the second one that we need to use. We can complete it by double-clicking on the definition. Once we have done this, we must create the instance of a person from the content page resources. We're going to do this in a similar way to how we work when we use colors. We're going to indicate that we want to create a content page resource and then create the new instance of the person, accessing the model's namespace. With this, we can see how Visual Studio shows us the available classes to use. Let's select the person class, and we must specify an X key to the resource to be able to be used later. Let's name it person. And once again, Visual Studio shows us the set of properties that we can set to create the instance of the person. In this case, I will indicate that the name will be equal to Peter, the address equal to some address, and for the telephone number I will place some characters to represent the telephone of a person. With this, automatically, when the page is created, the instance of the person would be created, which would be available to be used later. We're going to indicate that we want to assign a property of the model to the label control, which is this one that we see here. Remember that we must indicate which is going to be the bindable property to which we're going to link the information source. In this case, the bindable property is the property called text. Therefore, I'm going to remove the text string, and instead I'm going to indicate that I want to use a binding. We do this by creating a pair of braces and writing the term binding inside. We must also specify what is going to be the property of the source that we're going to bind. In this case, if we remember the example that we made previously, the property is name, whose value will be taken from the instance of the source, which is the instance person. Finally, we must establish what is going to be the information source for the label control, because we're indicating that we want to use a property called name, but we are not yet establishing from where the information origin is going to be taken, which is something similar to what we did with this line in the C# code. How can we set this source? Well, as part of the binding, we also have the property called source, which is exactly the same as we had seen in C# code. And we can specify what will be the source of information through another pair of braces, indicating that we want to use a static resource. This is to be able to access the instance person, from which the information will be taken to fill the text property using the property called name. Let's proceed to test once again the application to see how it behaves. And look how when the application is initialized, it is already placing the name that we established in the instance that we created previously. This is how we can create a binding as we did in C# code, but from the XAML code.